Alright, good morning. So last time we ended with the topic of the non-stock corporation. So right now, let's have first a review regarding this topic. Right? So let's start with the definition of the non-stock corporation. So it says here that a non-stock corporation is one where no part of its income is distributable as dividends to its members, trustees, or officers. Okay. In our previous discussion, we talked about that the non-stock corporation, kaya nga tinawag siyang non-stock because first of all, it is that the stocks of the said corporation are not offered to the public. Okay? It is just only limited to few people. Okay? Because the reason is that the corporation is not actually intended for profit purposes. Okay? They have this special reason, particularly they are advocating something, like for example they are helping a particular community, they would like to alleviate poverty, or they have that civic reason. Okay, they would like to help the government. Okay, so this is actually kung sa kwan pa, this is they have that angelic reason, okay, of why they have put up a particular corporation, which is a non-stock corporation. All right. Now, in addition, it says here that any profit which a non-stock corporation may obtain incidental to its operations shall, if you say incidental, meaning to say by having the said corporation, okay, there are income, okay? Income, meron pong lumabas na income na because of their operations, okay? Sabi dito, whenever necessary or proper, be used for the furtherance of the purpose or purposes for which the corporation was organized, subject to the provisions of this title. In other words, that the said income of the said non-stock corporation should be used for the furtherance. If you say furtherance, that should be used for the continuity of the purpose of their particular corporation. Okay? Meaning, kung ang kanilang purpose ay tumulong sa komunidad, then yung income na nag-arise po dahil po sa corporation na yun, then that should be used for the continuity of their advocacy. Okay? So that is for the non-stock corporation, particularly for their income. Okay? Now, Section 87, regarding the purposes, we also discussed this particular section before, that non-stock corporations may be formed or organized for charitable. Okay? Take note, may be formed. Okay? So, pwede pong magkaroon ng korporasyon na non-stock na ang purpose po ay charitable, okay? Religion, okay? Just like for example, the Iglesia ni Cristo, o itong mga incorporated na religious denomination dito sa ating bansa, okay? So, kasi meron pong ibang simbahan o relihiyon na hindi naman po rehistrado sa SEC, and that is also allowed, okay? Because of the separation of the church and the state. Now, we have also here educational, pang put up po ng isang paaralan, professional, cultural, fraternal, literary, scientific, social, civic service, or similar purposes. Now, if you observe that the mentioned purposes are actually there is something with their action which is helping the community or helping the government itself. Like for example, if you say cultural, that is for the preservation and the advancement or the development of the culture of the Lumad people. Okay? Fraternal, this is for brotherhood purposes or sisterhood purposes. Meaning this is for they are creating or founding the said organization to help the members. Okay? Literary, parang Shakespeare ito. Yun na nga, na-mention ko dati. Okay? So, they are promoting the literary works, okay, and that also helped the economy of the government of the country. Why? Kasi nga kung literary yan, maraming mga writers, so you're creating jobs for the writers, maraming mga ma-produce na mga literary works like books, artworks, etc. So in that case, that also help our economy kasi dagdag kita din yan. Just like for example, the European countries, they are known for their literary works, okay? So people will go to European countries, to Europe, in order to know, in order to appreciate, in order to see in personal of what are those artworks, of what are those literary works of the European people specifically during medieval time. Okay? So yan. Now, may dagdag dito like trade, industry, or agricultural and light chambers or any combination thereof subject to the special provisions of this title governing particular classes of non-stock corporations. Again, they are not prohibited by law to engage in trading, industry, agricultural, or light chambers. Okay? And light chambers. For as long as they will follow the special provisions of this particular title. Okay? Particularly for the provisions that governs the non-stock corporations. Okay? So yan po. Well, we have here the Section 88 for the members. As to the right to vote, the right of the members of any class or classes to vote may be limited, broadened, or denied to the extent specified in the Articles of Incorporation or the bylaws. Okay? Ibig sabihin that the right of the members to vote may be limited. Pwede pong malimitahan, pwede pong ma-broaden as well, or denied. Depende po kung ano po ang na-specify po sa Articles of Incorporation or the bylaws. Okay? Unless so limited, broadened, or denied, each member, regardless of class, shall be entitled to one vote. Okay? So please take note of that one vote. Now, in addition, unless otherwise provided in the Articles of Incorporation or the bylaws, members may vote by proxy. So allowed po yung proxy in accordance with the provisions of this code. Now, the bylaws may likewise authorize voting through remote communication and or in absentia. In other words, that the bylaws may authorize voting by way of remote communication or even in absentia for as long as it was authorized by their bylaws. Okay? So yan po yan. Now, Section 89, the non-transferability of membership. Well, it was clearly stated here that the membership in a non-stock corporation and all its rights arising therefrom are personal. So if you say personal, this is a matter of a decision of the stockholder alone. Okay? And in addition as well, it was stated here that it is non-transferable. Hindi po pwedeng matransfer ito. Maliban na lamang po that the Articles of Incorporation or the bylaws otherwise provide. In other words, kung it was, if it was permitted by the Articles of Incorporation or the bylaws, then that the stocks of the members are actually transferred or pwedeng i-transfer. Okay? They are allowed to transfer provided it was allowed in the Articles of Incorporation or the bylaws. Okay? Now, membership shall be terminated in the manner and for the causes provided in the Articles of Incorporation or the bylaws. Okay? Meaning to say that when it comes to the termination of the membership, then of what is the manner or the causes provided in the Articles of Incorporation, meaning to say they need to abide with the manner, meaning the procedure or the process on how to terminate a particular membership. Okay? And they need to follow as well the causes provided or mentioned in the Articles of Incorporation or the bylaws. Okay? So yan po mga kapatid. Now, in Section 93, Rules of Distribution, now, first bullet, the assets of a non-stock corporation undergoing the process of dissolution. Okay? So if you say dissolution, they are in the process of, meaning they stop their operation. Okay? And right now, they are about to sell their non-cash assets. Okay? So they would like to convert the said non-cash assets into cash. Okay? So we have here some rules to follow. Okay? So first of all, that the liabilities and obligations of the corporation shall be paid. Dapat po mabayaran po ang utang ng korporasyon. Okay? Satisfied and discharged, or adequate provision shall be made therefore. Okay? So what is clear here that the corporation's obligations and liabilities shall be discharged first. Meaning, dapat po mawala po yun, mabayaran na po yun. Okay? Now second, assets held by the corporation upon a condition requiring return, transfer, or conveyance, and which condition occurs by reason of the dissolution shall be returned, transferred, or conveyed in accordance with such requirements. Okay? Meaning to say that in letter B, if the corporation has the obligation to return something, okay, to return a particular property, or to transfer or convey, okay, meaning to say that before or in the process of dissolution, that they need to return, dapat pong isauli, i-transfer, or i-convey, okay, in accordance, of course, with the requirements as provided by the law. Okay? Now in letter C, assets received and held by the corporation subject to limitations, okay, permitting their use only for charitable, religious, benevolent, educational, or similar purposes. Okay? So, in this case, if there are properties received by a non-stock corporation, then, and if there are limitations regarding those properties, like for example, limiting only their use for charitable, religious, benevolent, educational, or similar purposes, then, sabi dyan, but not held upon a condition requiring return, transfer, or conveyance by reason of the dissolution, okay, shall be transferred or conveyed to one or more corporations, societies, or organizations engaged in activities in the Philippines, substantially similar to those of the dissolving corporation according to a plan of distribution adopted pursuant to this chapter. In other words, meaning to say that they are bound to transfer or convey to another corporation, which is a non-stock. Okay? For as long as the operations of the particular non-stock corporation is almost similar, or yun na nga sinasabing substantially, most likely at least 90% of the transactions or by their nature is actually somewhat the same with the corporation that was dissolved. Okay? So yan po yan. Now in D, assets other than those mentioned in the preceding paragraphs, if any, shall be distributed in accordance with the provisions of the Articles of Incorporation or the bylaws. Okay? To the extent that the Articles of Incorporation or the bylaws determine the distributive rights of members or any class or classes of members or provide for distribution. Okay? Ibig sabihin that kasi other than those mentioned in the preceding paragraph. Okay? Meaning, the way or the manner of the distribution, of course, you need to still follow what is being provided in the Articles of the Incorporation or the bylaws. Okay? So yan po yan. So what is clear here is that you need to follow what is being stated or what is being enumerated in the said Articles of Incorporation or the bylaws. Now in E, in any other case, assets may be distributed to such persons, societies, organizations, or corporations whether or not organized for profit. Okay? So take note, whether or not organized for profit. Mean to say, pwede po ang isang stock corporation. Okay? Pwede po. Provided it is specified in a plan of distribution adopted pursuant to this chapter. Okay? So please take note of this statement, as may be specified in a plan of distribution adopted pursuant to this chapter. Okay? So yan po yan. So as to the question of whether you can distribute the property or properties to entity which is not organized for profit, then the answer is yes, provided it was specified in a plan of distribution adopted pursuant to this chapter. Okay? Alright. So we are already here in a one-person corporation. This is a new scheme. Ito po yung bago po sa articles the Revised Corporation Code of the Philippines. Ito po yung wala po kasi ito dati. Okay? You know, the corporation before the Revised Corporation Code of the Philippines, the corporation before, you are allowed by law to create the said corporation provided there are at least 5 incorporators but not exceeding 15 incorporators. But today, because of the there are some changes. So, pinasok po itong one-person corporation. So, to tell you frankly, this is a good action by the Congress because you're allowing a sole person to create a corporation. Okay? So, meaning to say that he can enjoy what is being enjoyed by some corporations. Okay? By the corporations. So, this is a good news. Okay, maganda ito. So, let's go further. Pag-usapan natin yung mga detalye nito. Now, in section 116, okay, of course, it is a corporation with a single stockholder. Okay, iisa lamang po. Now, second, only a natural person, trust, or an estate may form a one-person corporation. Take note of this, that natural person po. Ibig sabihin, normal being, human being, okay? Trust, okay? Or an estate, okay? Mga properties na held in trust or estate. Now, the banks and quasi-banks, pre-need, ito yung mga insurance, okay? The public and public listed companies and non-chartered GOCC may not incorporate as one-person corporations. Please take note of this. May not. Okay? May not. Pero to tell you frankly, in reality, mahirap itong mga kumpanyang ito na mag-create ng isang one-person corporation. Why? Because of the nature of their corporation. It is public eh. Their nature is they are providing services to the public. And therefore, it needs greater accountability and also greater funding. That is why you need to have a lot of stockholders to survive or to continue with the operations of the said corporation, of the said banks, of the said public corporations. Okay? The next bullet is that natural person who is licensed to exercise a profession may not organize a one-person corporation for the purpose of exercising such profession. Okay? So take note of this, that a licensed certified public accountant cannot or may not, okay, organize a one-person corporation. The reason is because of the nature of the corporation, which is, andun na po sa pangalan niya na meron pong tatak na for commercial purposes or for profitable purposes or for profit purposes. It's not profitable. Okay? Meaning, pera po ang purpose. While in the practice of profession, it is just only secondary yung pong financial reason. Because the first reason or the primary reason is to provide quality service to the public. Okay? So, ganun po yan. Now, another specification being provided in the provision of the law, a one-person corporation shall not be required to have a minimum authorized capital stock except as otherwise provided by a special law. Okay? Meaning to say, wala pong nakaspecify na minimum authorized capital stock. Maliban na lamang po if it was specified by a special law. Of course, you need to follow that particular special law. Okay? And in the next bullet, a one-person corporation shall file articles of incorporation in accordance with the requirements under Section 14 of this code. Okay? So meaning you need to follow as well the Section 14. Now, it shall likewise substantially contain the following. Okay? So you need also to include itong mga na-mention dito. If you want to file or when you are filing or when you are applying for a one-person corporation. Okay? So first, if the single stockholder is a trust or an estate, then the name, pangalan, nationality, and residence of the trustee, administrator, executor, guardian, conservator, and of course custodian. You need to include that. So that's mandatory. Second is that you need to include the name, the nationality, the residence of the nominee and alternate nominee, and the extent, coverage, and limitation of the authority. Okay? Now, the one-person corporation is not required to submit and file corporate bylaws. Wow, this is good news. Hindi siya masyadong complicated. Okay? So, it is not required to submit and file corporate bylaws. Now, in addition, a one-person corporation shall indicate the letters OPC either below or at the end of its corporate name. Okay? Of course, the very purpose of this is to disclose in the public that it is a one-person corporation because the public has the right to know of what is the specification of your corporation. Okay? Now, third, the single stockholder shall be the sole director and president of the one-person corporation. Wow! So if you want to become a president of a corporation, then create your own corporation, a one-person corporation. So that will fulfill your dream if you want to become a president of a particular corporation. Okay? Now, within 15 days, from the issuance of its certificate of incorporation, so please take note of the number of days, the one-person corporation shall. So kailangan po mag-appoint ng treasurer, ng corporate secretary, and other officers as it may deem necessary. Okay? So please take note of this, as it may deem necessary, kung kinakailangan lamang po. And notify. You need to inform the commission thereof within 5 days from appointment. So, procedural ito. So, you need to follow the processes mentioned by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Now, the single stockholder may not be appointed as the corporate secretary. Syempre, ikaw na nga ang presidente, tapos ikaw pa ang secretary. Hindi pwede yan. Okay? At saka conflicting yung trabaho. Now, a single stockholder who is likewise the self-appointed treasurer of the corporation, shall give a band to the commission in such a sum as may be required. Okay? So, mag-issue ka ng band dito. Okay? Meron kang ibigay na pera doon sa Securities and Exchange Commission. If you are a self-appointed treasurer, if you appoint yourself as the treasurer as well, of course. Okay? So, provided that the said stockholder and treasurer shall undertake in writing to faithfully administer the one-person corporation's funds. Okay? So, dapat meron pong letter of undertaking. Okay? Talagang sinasabi niya doon sa letter na he should be faithful administering the funds of the said OPC. Okay? Now, and to disburse and invest the same according to the articles of incorporations as approved by the commission. Okay? Ibig sabihin, that you are, ika nga, through writing, you are giving your oath to the SEC that the operations of your corporation should be in accordance with what is being stated in the Articles of Incorporation. Okay? Kasi nga, the SEC is avoiding for example, yung nangyari po sa yung CAPA ministry. Okay? They are creating a corporation, a religious corporation, and yet in substance, they are doing business. Wala na yun. Kaya nga po, napahinto yun, nawala yun, it is because there are violations doon po on their own Articles of Incorporation, kung titingnan natin. Okay? Now, the ban shall be renewed every 2 years or as often as may be required. So take note of this, every 2 years or as often as may be required. Okay? Now, special functions of the corporate secretary. Ito po yung mga trabaho ng isang secretary. Of course, he is responsible for maintaining the minutes book and or records of the corporation. Okay? And also, it is his or her responsibility to notify the nominee or alternate nominee of the death or incapacity of the single stockholder. Kiyawa, no? So, if in case mamatay itong single stockholder, meron pong nominee or alternate nominee. So, he has that responsibility to notify. Now, the notice shall be given no later than 5 days from such occurrence. So, take note, no later than 5 days. Okay? Third, notify the commission of the death of a single stockholder. So, kailangan niyang i-inform yung SEC, okay, na patay na pala yung single stockholder. From such occurrence and stating in such notice the names, residence addresses, and contact details of all known legal heirs. Okay? Yan. And to call the nominee or alternate nominee and the known legal heirs to a meeting and advise the legal heirs with regard to, among others, the election of a new director, amendment of the Articles of Incorporation, and other ancillary and or consequential matters. Okay? So these are just procedural. Okay? So, yun na nga, ang sekretary ay at least klaro yung trabaho ng sekretary dyan, because in law, you cannot assume a specific function of a particular position of a corporation. Now, the single stockholder shall designate a nominee. Of course. Okay? Kung kailangan kasi yan if in case mamatay yung single stockholder. Okay? Now, the Articles of Incorporation shall state the names, residence addresses, and contact details of the nominee. Eh, syempre, kinakailangan yan para makontak. Okay? The written consent of the nominee and alternate nominee shall be attached to the application for incorporation. Okay? So, there should be consent, of course. Because, how can you manage the said corporation in the first place where, if you're not being notified, hindi mo alam, there is a violation of your right, okay? Hindi naman pwede yan. Kaya nga, kailangan ng written consent. Now, such consent may be withdrawn in writing, so pwede namang i-withdraw ito, before the death or incapacity of the single stockholder, okay? Now, the single stockholder shall designate a nominee, okay? Yun na nga, if in case mamatay, now, names, so very procedural, written consent shall be attached, okay? Very procedural as well. Okay. Pwedeng i-change yung nominee at any time, please take note of that. Then a one-person corporation shall maintain a minutes book which shall contain all actions, decisions, and resolutions taken by the one-person corporation. Siyempre. Records in lieu of meetings, okay? When action is needed on any matter, it shall be sufficient to prepare a written resolution signed and dated by the single stockholder and recorded in the minutes book of one-person corporation. Parang ding korporasyon talaga na hindi one person, okay? Ito parang kuti ito, o akong tanawon eh. Okay, kasi kung i-compare mo ito sa sole proprietorship, hindi na kailangan ito. Okay, now the date of recordings in the minutes book shall be deemed to be the date of the meeting for all purposes under this code. Okay, as to the reportorial requirements, of course, you are bound to file an annual financial statements, of course, that must be audited by an independent certified public accountant. Now, there is in addition to that, kung meron pong assets and liabilities na less than 600,000 pesos, then the financial statement shall be certified under oath by the corporation's treasurer and president. Okay? A report containing explanations or comments, right? So take note of that. A disclosure of self-dealings, right? The fiscal year, yan. Commission may place the corporation under delinquent status should the corporation fail to submit the reportorial requirements 3 times consecutively or intermittently within a period of 5 years. Okay, so please take note of this. Now, the liability of a single stockholder, okay, he has that burden of affirmatively showing that the corporation was adequately financed. Now, where the single stockholder cannot prove that the property of the one-person corporation is independent, then the stockholder shall be jointly and severally liable for the debts and other liabilities of one-person corporation. Okay, please take note of this. Meaning to say, if the said stockholder cannot prove the property, that the property of the OPC is independent, ibig sabihin, hindi niya kayang i-prove na ito po'y pagmamayari ng OPC, then his liability is jointly and severally. If you say jointly and severally, this is solidary. Okay? Now, the principles of piercing the corporate veil applies with equal force to one-person corporation as with other corporation. Of course, the piercing the veil of corporate entity, of course, this is also applicable to the OPC. Right? The conversion, pwedeng i-convert, okay? When a single stockholder acquires all stocks of an ordinary stock corporation, the latter may apply for one. Okay, pwede. In this case, what is clear here is that an ordinary corporation is allowed by law in accordance with Section 131 to an OPC. Now, the OPC converted from ordinary stock shall succeed the latter and be legally responsible for all the latter's outstanding liabilities as of the date of conversion. Of course. Now, kung mamatay po yung stockholder, yung nominee po, okay, shall transfer the shares to the duly designated legal heir or estate within 7 days from receipt of either an affidavit of heirship or self-adjudication. Okay? Very procedural ito. And within 60 days from the transfer of shares, the legal heir shall notify the commission, another procedural. Okay? So please take note of that process. Okay, dissolution. Siyempre, ma-dissolve ito. May be dissolved either voluntarily or, of course, involuntarily. Now, Section 135, voluntary dissolution where creditors are affected, and in 136, dissolution by shortening corporate term. Okay? And dissolution by commission motu proprio or upon filing of a verified complaint by any interested party. Okay? So, no creditors are affected. Okay? Walang affected na mga creditors. Okay? Okay. They had upon the call directors or trustees. Alright. Walang problema dyan. Okay. Ito, hindi na ito pang OPC eh. Pang-kwan na ito. Pang normal corporation. Yeah. Please take note of the number of the 2/3 votes. Yan. Corporate term, shortening. Okay. So you need to amend the articles of incorporation. Okay. Yan. Withdrawal request shall be made in writing, so please take note of that. That is for formality purposes. Okay, involuntary dissolution, hindi mo kagustuhan, pero na-dissolve yung corporation. So ito po yung grounds. So non-use of corporate charter, continues in operation. Okay, hindi na nag-operate. Then upon receipt of a lawful court order dissolving the corporation, pinahinto ka ng korte. And upon finding a final judgment that the corporation procured its incorporation through fraud. Ayan, may panloloko. Ito, upon finding by final judgment that the corporation was created for the purpose of committing, concealing, or aiding. Ayan, you are the bridge of creating a crime. Second, committed or aided in the commission of securities violations. Okay? Third, repeatedly and knowingly tolerated the commission of graft and corrupt practices. Yan. Yan. Okay, corporate liquidation. Yan. Anyway, foreign corporations, that will be discussed in the next discussion. So yun, that's it. Thank you.